Yo, FoxDrop, could you count to 3, please?
Up or down?
Anywhere, anyhow, please.
Anyway, okay. Wait, let me think. I'm gonna go. Okay, I'm gonna start. Do I start at 1 or 0?
You can start 1.
I think you failed already, if I'm being honest. So I would revoke it already and just say we've checked the levels, so no more talking needed.
Could you count? Wait, could you count?
Executive decision there.
Okay.
No, I can't. Fuck yourself, you little cunt. Does that level work for you? Good.
All right, you're in the yellows, Duncan. FoxDrop, could you
Good.
talk for a little
I'll be in
bit?
the fucking...
Hello,
I'll be in a lot more than that.
Let him talk for a bit so I can check his level, please.
He was talking for about a minute straight, you daft little shit. You know, it doesn't literally matter if he says 1, 2, 3. All you're looking at is whether the bar is yellow, red, or green. He literally talked for about 3 minutes. He said, I wonder if I'll do it by descending order. Like, nobody's ever said more words while counting to 1 to 3 than this cunt, and you couldn't figure it out. Here's an idea. Get that fucking program I told you about that literally balances the levels.
I know,
Just
but
tell him.
I did.
Oh, there you go.
I did send it.
Go on then, explain to me again how your production skills are mega, as I'm sure in this episode, for no reason whatsoever, all of this in the background will be in the fucking frame, even though your frame, I notice, always is just you, and any normal human would make it just a head, because there's no acting in this show. It's just heads talking.
Sometimes you'll
So
use
get your
hands.
fucking head in this
Sometimes
spot.
you'll use hands, Doran. Oh my god.
Yeah, that's what they tell you when they fucking feel bad for you, I know.
Oh.
Mate, everything can come back onto you. Understand that. Never fuck with me. Right. I'm in a good mood today. I'm ready to talk about some LEC. I'll
Holy
just quickly
fucking shit.
Right. Right, this is going to be episode 65 of Listen Loco. We've got FoxDrop again, which in line with the last episode, which was with Mark Z, means Locodoco's Rolodex is about 5 people, and when he can't get the actual guests that he wants, he just goes to those 5 people and he goes, you said yes the last 3 times, do it again this week, and then they go, pfft. I mean, even the luster for me's kind of gone, but I guess I will, Loco, fair enough. So, okay, let's paint on a fake smile and plow through more of this shit for another 2 hours. So, all right, FoxDrop. Oh, all right, mate, how you doing?
Yeah, as good as a suboptimal guest can be.
Well, you know what? We'll make the best of it. If I'm being honest, you know, some people would say suboptimal co-host on this show. You know, I had other people in mind once upon a time, but you know, we don't always get our first choices in life. Sometimes we have to settle for second best. Anyway, how you doing, Loco?
What the fuck is wrong with you today? What'd you do? What happened today, Duncan? Why are you like this? Did something happen in CSGO?
No, not really.
Okay.
No, it's just unfortunately, like, I think at the moment I'm just in a bit of burnout. Been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes. People will find out in the future, but I've been fucking grinding hard. So it's not that LEC doesn't interest me. It's just that I always find every split, like the first 2 to 3 weeks, never fully feels like it's at like top speed. You don't feel like the league's really got going yet. You, like, for example, as we talk about most of the teams on this episode, as we did on the last one, we'll try, if we can, to point out the strength of schedule that they played, because there's another factor, right? I always hate it when people are like, this team's top of the league. It's like, did they play all the bad teams? You know, if like as we saw with, I forget who it was, I think it was FlyQuest, right? Was it Optic? No,
Echo Fox. Echo Fox played all the top teams.
Echo Fox was the team that had only won 1 game, but they played like 4 top teams. So yeah, again, you can't just look at the schedule overall. So basically, I'm still waiting for the hook to get me into LEC summer split. FoxDrop, what do you think it should be? Because the problem is, right, it can't just be, isn't G2 great? That was the hook from the first split. And yeah, the answer, spoiler, is yeah, they are still fucking amazing. At the moment, like, I don't really personally believe in the Fnatic run. So that's not got me that hyped as it was when they were coming back and spread. What do you think the hook should be? What's the big storyline for you this split? Or something that you want to see emerge or happen? What excites you? What excites you about the summer?
I thought you said, what is IQ? And I'm like, just a definition? Or...
that's the sort of thing Loco says when he's doing a job application.
What?
Anyway, keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
I mean, you already said I can't talk about G2, can I? So I guess.
No, you can. Maybe you've got a different twist on it then. So it's not just that they're brilliant. What's
twist? It's just that this is, for me, this is the Moscow 5 of the modern League of Legends. You know, like I started watching competitive league back in, starting season 1, and season 2, you had like 2 good Western teams, COG EU, who almost won Korea, but they got reverse swept in the finals on the beach. That was fantastic. You know, the Froggen, Snoopy, Yellow Pete, Crepo, and Wicked. You know, they were amazing. Moscow 5 literally reinvented the way you play the game, at least from the jungle with Diamond Procs. And then you go and they play in Worlds, and I think they got knocked out in quarters, maybe
semis by TPA. Yeah,
TPA 2-1 because it was a best of 3. And I remember I felt it was the first time because I felt like empty in a sense that didn't scratch any kind of itch. Like if you play a best of 5 and you lose that best of 5, at least you feel like, okay, fucking close series. St. Louis Blues versus Boston Bruins, first cup in St. Louis history, but it's the best of 7, and it goes to 7 games, 4-3 in favor of St. Louis. If you're a Boston fan, at least you think, fuck it, it was a good fucking series, right?
And you had your chances to win. You can't really feel too bad with that, can you?
Exactly. And I never felt that with Moscow 5. Anyway, with Moscow 5. Anyway, I'm rambling a bit, but either way, for me, G2 is the Moscow 5 of this era. I never thought I'd say that. If you go back like 2 years, I never thought I would say that about a Western team.
Here's the thing, FoxDrop, I always get triggered. Anyone who's seen my Twitter knows this. I hate this. Like, I think it's a phenomenon of online culture where people's way to contribute to a conversation is to be like, actually, I think what you'll find is that this is actually correct, you know, like that. And they think they're contributing, but unless that's like really appropriate, they're really just being like an arsehole who's just kind of like nitpicking for no reason, right? So the reason I bring this up,
every league analyst ever.
The reason I bring this up, right, is because I love, obviously, as someone who likes the historical aspect to all esports games, I love comparisons. I love trying to look what are similarities or what themes carry through history. And so what I hate is when someone makes an analogy, you're only supposed to address the analogy on the specific point that they are drawing the comparison between. There's no point saying like, well, they're not exactly the same in this way or in another way. Like, that's irrelevant. So in the particular case where he's saying, like, you're saying right here that they're like Moscow 5, give us a couple of reasons why that is. Like, what is it that's reminding you of that? Or what feeling are you getting in that sense? Because I kind of agree with it, but I want to see where you go with it.
It has to be innovation, right?
Yeah, I think that's one of it for me is just the way that other teams look to these teams to see how to play League of Legends. And I think that was something like with Moscow 5 did. I mentioned how they kind of just reinvented this whole counter jungling style. I still remember, I think it was Dignitas, where there's a play where they like 3-man invade Dom on his red buff, fuck him up there, and then goes to Pepper, like flashes, or whatever he's called now. I actually think his name changed, Edward. I think his name changed back to Pep, whatever, it doesn't matter. Flashes over the wall as Alistair and just fucks Scar in the mid lane as well. And it's like, no one does that. Like, before that point, everyone just goes to lane. You know, everyone just goes to lane and just plays League of Legends. But Moscow 5 broke League of Legends, and it was like, watching it was, I mean, it was exciting as well because it's aggressive, and I think that is, as a spectator, always kind of cool to watch. And I think G2 are a similar case where I think eyes are on G2 where they don't, these guys just win because they're, God, this is, okay. I was going to say they win because they're good. That's the dumbest analytical statement you could ever say. But honestly, in an ironic sense, it's like just a very accurate thing to say as well. Like the way these guys play, you don't have to look much further than like the champion picks and the fact that they have like a mid laner in the bot lane. It's like these guys, almost like G2 last year when you have Hishon, who's like so good on Heimerdinger that they just immediately draw a ban. At this time, Perks is actually good on like every mage, not just one cheese pick. And it's like, it makes drafting against them really hard. Pyke can literally play in 4 different lanes. Like they're just really bloody good at the game. And I think that the good word like Loco uses, innovation. Like we saw it in the finals against Origin as well. Their counter to the Sonataric bot lane with that wacky ass Xayah funnel. Just the way they play, it's almost like they're setting the pace, if that makes sense. Whereas before, it had been very rare for like the past half decade that a Western team like sets the table. It was the Koreans set the table and then everyone else ate at it. But now,
well, if you remember, famously, what everyone used to make fun of NA as a region for is being the copycat region of Korea, right? Mm-hmm. Well, all that needs to be said, that absolutely backs up your point here, is look at how many stupid ass Pyke top picks or Pyke picks in general we had from NA already in LCS. And by the way, Pyke NA is a real thing. That is a fucking meme. Like, none of them had any clue what they were doing with those comps, what they were doing that. But what happened was they obviously just saw Wonder play it. They saw the game maybe, I think it was Caps played it in that LEC final, and they just thought in their brains, again, well, that's the best thing to do, so why don't we just copy that? And it's actually, I think it backs you up on some level, because here's the thing, when I saw the Pyke pick, I was like, I don't know how G2 even made that work. And Aether just thought, it must just be a broken champion, so that even goes with what you said. I think there's something to that, mate. People are kind of looking at it. In fact, I have to say, another point of comparison is when Moscow 5 was the best, which obviously was when Korea actually got really, really good as well the same year. Crucially, here's the thing. Yeah, there were a couple of players, like maybe, let's say, Froggen, Doublelift. There was a couple of Western players that Koreans did really respect heavily. But like in terms of like what they wanted to pick and how they wanted to play the game, that's why like Diamond Proc stood above all the others. Because the difference is, for years after that, the Korean junglers would still be like, oh yeah, he was so brilliant, you know, and the things he was doing, we used to copy. I think you already see that now, actually, in terms of Korea. Because I've even seen all the Korean analysts and casters, etc., trying to take apart the G2 picks and figure out what they're doing and why they do certain things and what their style was. I mean, if you just saw recently, Emily and Ashley did a podcast where the whole theme of it was like, should Korea copy G2 style, basically? Like, imagine how alien that concept would be like 3 years ago. Even if a Western team had won Worlds 3 years ago, you know, maybe Fnatic season 5, no one would have been saying, like, should all of Korea just now look towards Europe? You know, we'd be like, that's one good team, wouldn't we? So I do feel like they're a game changer. I even like the comparison as well. I think there's quite a few points on it. Like, innovation is obviously one. I'd even say I'd add in, like, in terms of champion picks, they're both teams who it's not even just like they think they've got the most OP picks. They just pick stuff that they like. They sometimes just pick for their own comfort or their own whims, which is another very, very famous Moscow 5 trip, by the way. There was some games where legendarily they would win on a pick, and you'd even hear an interview and then they'd be like, no, I barely played that actually. I just thought in this particular comp it'd be good, which is like, that is not a normal way for pros to think, even back then, to be honest. Even back then, people went for power picks. And then the last angle I'd add in is like that infectious team fighting style. That does remind me quite a lot, because that was the thing about M5 was like, they played in the same era as the CLGEU that was going to 60-minute games. The difference is, because they were just so willing to follow up and fight you at any time, they could end a game in like 21 minutes, which reminds me also of this G2 team, because that's the other thing. If you play this team, I think even that classic EULCS aphorism about M5 applies. The one where you say, if you give them a finger, they take the whole arm. That is G2. Everyone knows if they get a little gap, you're fucked. I mean, Origin showed it in that first game. Origin made so many great decisions in that game, but every little mistake they made got punished and they couldn't win the game. I think it's a pretty legit analogy. Like I say, there's no point looking at the angles that aren't right. Like, yeah, obviously M5 wasn't a super team, blah, blah, blah. That's not really that relevant. I like the analogy. I think it's good.
I think to go off your point as well, if you saw the SKG2 game this last week, what was really terrifying about that is that SK actually held their own really, really, really well versus G2. So that whole kind of like, you give them a finger, they take the whole arm. There were no fingers being given at all. And then just it happens, and G2 won in like 3 minutes. And it was like, you know, SK like had a gold lead, you know, like it was minor, but like they weren't dead and buried, and then suddenly G2 are just wrapping it up and sending it on its way. It's no, G2 just decide it's happening. All right, we're winning the game now, and they just win. And that's actually something, I'm biased, but I don't think that any other team in the world is quite as good at G2 at that specific part of their game, where they just turn it on around the kind of 15 to 20 minute mark and just See, I don't even know how to like specifically break it down, but you just watch it and it just happens, you know? And
we even used to have, if you remember, back in EULCS for Moscow 5 and Gambit, there was also a similar concept, which was like, if you're at an even gold, like if the gold's even or you're all like 2k ahead, the joke was you're not really ahead because they're always so exceptional at fighting. It's like they could always, in an instant, if you fucked up, come back in the game. And G2 definitely has that because, you know, that's actually probably the part of the whole MSI narratives that kills me the most is like people went too far trying to make IG and G2 like the same team because they had some overlapping similarities. And one area they definitely went way too far with is making it sound like G2 starts every game like 8 kills up. They can start behind at the beginning. They're just so insane in the middle of the game though.
It's terrifying.
What'd you guys think of the Wonder Paint stuff? Because I had a pretty unpopular opinion on it, so I'm very curious what you guys thought about Wonder opening up Paint.
He means on the pro view. This is like so people can see, and he typed in like g2esports.com/shop or whatever that fucking meme they're always spamming.
He drew on paint saying what is going on. Like literally drew on paint with the mouse.
And what was the context of this?
Like it was.
I think he was like on his island on Yorick, and then
right.
The map was just
Clown Fiesta outside with Pike and Yumi and people chasing them around.
Yeah. I'm interested to hear your take, Loco, because it might not be as weird of a take as you think.
It's going to be some stupid shit, but let's go. Come on, then.
I think
I'll give you a chance, but I want to hear this. Come on.
I love how free G2 is. I love how stylish they have been, and I love their whole bad boy image. But
here?
I like them butts, and I cannot. Come on.
I do think it was a little bit over, like the line to open up paint.
What line?
The game.
What line?
Like line of, like I guess. Just,
what line would that be?
It's why do you put me on the spot like this? Why do you make it harder on your co-host? Why do you make it? It was over the line in terms of like, what is it? Showing respect for your opponent and showing respect for your teammate and showing like respect for the game. I understand like they can do whatever the fuck they want and it is their freedom. And like they are by far the best team in Europe and by far the best team in the West still. But there is like a certain showboating aspect that crosses a line, in my opinion. Like opening.
Wait a second. Let me ask you this then. So is it right? The one part I am a bit confused about is I don't know why you threw in like respect for your opponent because the opponent can't see the MS pin, right? It's only people on.
And they'll know afterwards, right? They'll know afterwards.
They might do, but it's not like during the game you distract them or something. They don't know what you do, right? So, but anyway, put that to one side for a second. When you say like showing respect for your teammates or the game itself, like that's why I'm puzzled why you'd be so sort of triggered by that. Because I have to say, to me, it's not a big deal. Like the fact that you're getting upset does sound like fucking in English we call it like pearl clutching.
Yeah, stick up your ass. I understand. I understand it's not a popular opinion.
Women would be like, "Oh my gosh, how could they say something?" That's what you're doing right now. Because what I don't get is this, Loco. Right? If it's BM to do that in MS Paint, then surely every single thing that people do in the game is BM. Like
no, in the game there is like
another character, or tower diving when you've got the game won. Surely that's BM by that logic, right?
That is like within the context of the game and within context of like here is like the. I know everyone has their own imaginary on what's okay, right? Everyone has their own imaginary box on what's okay. I think
so. Why does that fuck with it for you?
For me, that's okay. For me, everything within that box is okay.
Everything in the game, that's fine. Right?
Yeah, everything within the game, that's fine. Even all chatting, I think is fine. But when you open up Paint and like you're taking time out to like draw like what is going on, like for me that crossed my imaginary.
Why does it bother you though in that sense though? Like why is it specifically the fact that
I'm not going to sleep. I'm not going to sleep going like, oh my fucking god.
No, but I mean, I just don't even know why that's bothering you. Like that's what I'm trying to get to the bottom of. Like what was it disrespectful about it?
Do you think that the what is going on is disrespectful to like?
Was it the specific?
He could have wrote G2esports.com shop. Or he could have wrote "Hi Mom." He could have wrote.
And is that disrespectful?
He could have wrote "Locodoco is the best," and I still would have been like a bit bothered by like him opening up Paint.
I mean, I would have asked for him to be banned for hate speech, but
him was intelligent, but
yeah,
I know exactly.
Him opening up Paint and like drawing like crossed the line for me, and I don't even think he should get punished. But oh my god, why do you make it like? I'm some kind of like, I hate you, Duncan. I fucking hate you.
So why are you asking me this? I defended you getting fucking fired over shit that was worse than that.
I mean, this is like, okay, I mean, I've done bad behavior before, and I don't think like...
No, I've defended it, so why are you asking me? If you haven't noticed, my general approach is, unless it really causes like legitimate harm, and this doesn't, it's like mildly triggering maybe, I don't think it's that big a deal personally. Like
maybe I'm a special snowflake. Maybe I'm a snowflake.
No, but here's the part that did confuse me though. I almost get the part where you say in the game everything's fine. So I agree. That's the reason why, for example, I actually don't think it should be considered like any kind of punishable offense by Riot or the teams to like stop people from tower diving or doing dances. So I think that's absolutely fine because in the game it's building. Fine. But what weirds me out, I guess, is why did you draw the line so that it doesn't include all chat? That's the part I don't get. Surely all chat's the same as doing the MS Paint, kind of. I mean, you are talking to the person in a way is that really part of the game?
Yeah, that's part of the game. That's part of like built into the system. That's part of like what is possible, like all chat. And there are ways if it really does bother you, you can mute them too.
One question then.
Okay.
So would it have been fine for him to have just typed in all chat what is going on?
For me, it would have bothered me less for sure, and I probably would have been okay with it. Like
right, well, I'm glad we just spent 20 minutes absolutely narrowing down the incredibly fine line of what makes you mildly uncomfortable enough to bring it up and pearl clutch. But then at the same time, when I tried to push for any sort of real meaning, you were just like, I'm not fucking, like, staying up all night being bothered about it. Anyway, let's talk more. Is it outside the lines, inside the lines, between the lines? What are lines? Lines? Quadrat? Like, whatever. What do you think, Fox? I imagine, like me, you probably just looked at it and thought, huh, and then moved on with your life, right?
I think it's funny. It doesn't bother me that he opened up an external program or anything like that. I think it's funny. I actually, perhaps a bit ironically here, I think all chatting to BM.
I think that's equally bad, surely.
No, I think that's like so.
Yeah.
I think this was on ProView. I'm assuming it was. But when Attila and Jack Troll got a 2v2'd, I guess, at level 1 by Sona Tarek. Which is like probably the worst play that we've seen
of course.
in
That'd be
LEC.
top-worthy as fuck.
Yeah. Vander and all chat typed a question mark as it happened, like when he died.
Yeah,
just like
classic.
question mark them.
Classic needle.
Yeah, right.
By the way, that can actually be a better needle than if you'd even said anything, because the question mark is just even more triggering. Like, what the fuck is he talking about? Question mark. Like, that'll get to you even more. I love that.
That is definitely something that gets on the skin. And I look at that and I'm like, if I was on the receiving end, like, you fucked up, right?
Of course.
You fucked up. And then you just type that. It's like, it's so rude. But at the same, I kind of recognize that that's probably me with like a stick up my ass if I think that's too far. I think it's BM for sure, but I don't know whether I like take exception to it. I think regarding Wonder's thing though, like Riot celebrated it by putting it on like Twitter and stuff like that, and like they definitely didn't hide that it had happened, but I think that they got a warning for doing it as well. From what I heard, that they're not allowed to do it because it's a third program, and it's like almost a case where Riot doesn't have a problem with that, but if say,
well, at that point, it's like, where does the line go? Like, are they allowed to open, like VLC players and start playing a cartoon? Presumably not. Like, so I see what you mean. There is probably some line on like what you can do with third-party programs. I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's like. I don't think you'll be seeing it too much, Loco, so you can sleep easy. Don't have to watch LEC, like, worrying whether it's going to keep you up.
I'm not, oh my god, I'm not going to sleep. I was just bothered about it, and I wanted to talk about it, and you walking, oh my god, you made
Here's the thing, here's my take on
snowflake. I'm triggered now. I'm actually triggered now.
Like first of all, it's not even like in this particular case, I actually think as a topic it's worth bringing up, because obviously if you allow that to happen, there's a world in which someone eventually would go the next step, and what they wrote in MSP wouldn't just be a fun comment like that. It would be something like, lol, look at these shitters, or something. Like, someone eventually would go over the line and like essentially get into potential trouble or whatever. I don't think this was it. I think this is probably a fairly harmless one. But in terms, I'm just amazed that Loco for some reason like draws the line to include. Well, I guess I kind of get it, and I don't. Like, on the one level, I don't really see how that's that much different to doing the all chat one. To me, they're like similar.
There's just like within rules of the game. That's for me. Like within the rules of the game. That's like.
But I will say this: I actually personally hate the fact that they ever disallowed all chat or didn't want people typing it. I personally thought from day one the rule in LCS should have been always the spectator client is set up so that there is no all chat. You never get to know that they're typing anything to each other whatsoever. But all chat should have been allowed, and it should absolutely be allowed to talk shit. Now, I would obviously put limits, like probably don't go and like maybe don't even swear, don't even risk saying other things in non-English languages in case you're saying something that's horrific. I would say maybe put that in, although it wouldn't be on stream, just for the sake of your competitors. But I personally think you should actually. This is going to be an unusual opinion in League. I think you actually should be allowed to talk shit like directly in all chat, because personally I consider it part of competition in the same way as if you're playing football, absolutely you can whisper in the ear of the defender who just defended you, like fucking skinned you and wrecked you, didn't that? Absolutely, that's psychological warfare. It's another component of being a pro. Now, you don't have to do that. Most people won't. Probably most people will just, like they do in real matches. If you ever see in the NBA, half the time if they ever mic them up, it's really just like two guys at a free throw line going like, how's the season going for you anyway? It's just minor stuff, isn't it? So most of the time it'll never be a problem. But I actually do think if people want to do some trash talk, I think it's fine. Like that thing that he said Vander did there, I think it's fucking hilarious.
I know I use these comparisons a lot because I'm a hockey fan, but hockey players are like the biggest trash talkers on the ice. They say some proper nasty stuff to each other at times. Even some of it's funny. Like one guy called someone else. He says, like, "Hey, dickhead, you look like a pigeon." It's like cooing at him. And that's just I don't know. You're just trying to get under the skin, right? That's the whole point of like.
I'll tell you one of the best ones
like
ever. FoxDrop, one of the best trash talks ever, right, is the player Kevin Garnett. I think this was actually when he was playing for. I'm trying to think what team he played for right at the end. He played for a different team than the Celtics, I think, when he did this. But anyway, when he was playing a game against the New York Knicks, he whispered in the ear of Carmelo Anthony and told him that his wife tastes like Honey Nut Cheerios. Oh. Now, that is fucking god tier trash talk. Because the idea there, right, is supposed to be Kevin Garnett, presumably, if you look at his career, can handle trash talk. He doesn't get, like, you know, bent out of shape by it. He's going to perform the same way anyway. But the concept there, and it worked, is if the other guy, in this particular case, Carmelo Anthony, would go mental from that, then you get to win this game, perhaps. You know, maybe that pushes him off his game or makes him go harder at you and therefore, you know, overreaches, you know, all sorts of things can go. So I think that should be a component within it. Most people would never actually, like, execute that option anyway. So it's not like it's going to happen all the time. And I definitely would understand, by the way, why you wouldn't allow it if it was going to be on stream. That's why I said I would just make the client not show it. But I do think it should be part of the game, because at the end of the day, like, these aren't 12-year-old kids playing. This is actually a man's game. This is a profession. This is something where you're supposed to be the best in the world. If you want to trash talk, I think that's fine, personally.
See, I would actually disagree with that.
Yeah, because you'd get triggered by my trash talk. I'd be loving it. I'd be spewing dog shit everywhere. You'd be going, the fuck's he doing that question mark? I'd be like, listen, motherfucker, I'm going to have like a hashtag coming in soon. Hashtag Fox dropped. That'd be me when I fucking killed you level 1. There we go.
But that's just like me and Solo Q anyway. People were chatting shit anyway whenever.
Oh god, I bet as a caster you get it non-stop now, mate, on your main account. I bet it's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's terrible. But I disagree just the concept of these like grown-ups playing a grown-up game, because I just think like these are. So a lot of pro players are really socially awkward, because in order to get good at video games, you have to play a lot of video games, and that tends to coincide with not going outside and socializing. So and ex-pros, they're the worst. So no, just kidding, mate. I love you. So like they're not great social skills. They have mega inflated egos because suddenly they're being paid like 6 figures and they're like celebrity status and all that stuff. Plus they are very young, right? Mm-hmm. They're like genuinely teenagers, some of them. There's a player Inspired who's playing for Rogue right now in the LEC. He's born in 2002. He's 17. Like,
whoa!
There's
people kids, born in 2002. Holy shit, competing in LEC.
I know, right? I know, it's crazy. So for me,
he only knows about 2 Spider-Men. Great fighter joke if anyone knows about that franchise. Hey, we keep going.
Thanks, sorry, mate. Always fleshing it out with quality additions. I think these people aren't great at understanding trash talk without it just turning into like actual anger. Do you remember when there was a pause between, it was again Moscow 5 and it was an NA team, I can't remember who it was exactly. There was a pause and one of the NA players said something in all chat. It wasn't like hostile, it was like,
I think this actually might have been TSM, because famously, like it was an online qualifier, and famously Moscow Fire had to apologize afterwards for like saying something.
Because they were like,
might have actually been TSM.
The American team was like, damn, this pause is taking a while, something like that. Or nice day, genuinely something completely harmless.
And they were like, shut up, R-word. There we go. If something like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, you know, I'm not sure how well that would go down, and I've heard there are some kind of like tentative player relations anyway between teams and between players. So I think it has a risk of just actually not being trash talk and these people not really understanding it and being able to kind of like do it in a. I would agree with your conclusion that in a mature. It has a place in a mature setting, but I don't think professional esports is a mature setting.
So I don't think it's a mature setting, but the more we baby people, the more it's going to be immature and the more people are going to be protected. Like if you want your kid and if you want people to be more immune to trash talk and more immune to like kind of difficulties, you don't protect them. Like you give them the tools to protect themselves and give them the tools to be like mentally solid instead of being like no trash talk. That's why I'm okay with all chat. Like, and generally like people like being under stress, people like answering questions from interviewers, like people being confrontational and like actually talking about problems. Like I think if you coddle players too much, then it becomes even worse. So I'm actually for all chat. I know it's really weird. I'm not for opening up paint, and I am for all chat. It's just for me, it's just within the context of the game, do whatever the fuck you want.
Plus, I always did think, by the way, just as a quick aside, we'll move on from this to talk about like European League of Legends or some bullshit in a minute. But just to close up this topic, I'll also say another reason I wish Trash Talk existed is because, and Loco, you can confirm this, I know for a fact that is actually one of the only ways Westerners might have been able to fuck with the best Korean players. If someone, because Korea is so much about honor and your public face and how people treat you with respect, etc. You could trigger some of those Korean players, I'm telling you, if you bantered them in all chat. Like, if you just type some shit in, you know, like in season 5 or whatever, like Faker dies, you just put something like, maybe Pumandu wasn't the biggest problem in SKT. Just put some shit like that in like all chat in the middle of a game. He's got to at least now think about that. He's come from a world where people respect you, you know, people respect professionally, and now someone's just talking buku mad shit up in his two-time season-winning grill. I'd love that. Or I'd just say something like, I'd even go the childish route. Are you ready, FoxDrop? Because obviously the key thing here is it's hard to bring up trash talk to Faker, isn't it? So I'd just go with some like mega childish one, like from the UK community of esports, where you just go like say he kills you, you just go fucking try hard. When have you ever been outside, you little shit? You know, like I'd go with like that lame angle, which doesn't even work, obviously, because you are both trying to be good in the video game. But the UK, that's always been our like go-to in the UK. You just go with the angle of like, all right, you win video games, but whatever, you probably never even fucking get any pussy anyway, you little bitch.
Everyone that's better than me is a tryhard.
Yes, of course.
Everyone that's worse than me is a noob.
Of course, but the problem is though, no one's ever said that to Faker, so I just want to see how he'd respond, basically. It's the way that would really be that really would be my childish use. Like if I could go back in time or go to some point and play like one pro game, I wouldn't even be trying to like win the game, Fox. I'd just be talking mad shit to everyone, wouldn't I?
Oh my god!
But I would enjoy it. That's the key thing. So anyway,
fun, mate.
Anyway, let's just talk about some League of Legends in Europe, shall we? How about this? Since G2 hasn't lost a game yet, and they do look amazing, even though there are moments in those games, yeah, they could have lost. Certainly, I'd agree with both those examples, the Origin, the SK examples, right? Most people have this opinion, FoxDrop, that no matter how good G2 is, and most people seem to actually agree they might be the best Western team ever, best European team ever. I notice most people are of the opinion they won't go undefeated. Like something about their style or the current meta just means it's like so likely they'll go whatever. Would it actually be 18-0 still? Let me think. Yeah. I think it would be. I think it's still 18 games, right?
Yeah, 18
right. So presumably everyone thinks they're not going to go 18-0. Do you also agree with that, or do you think a perfect season is possible? Perfect split, rather.
Yeah, I actually agree with basically everything in the way you framed it as well. G2 just, to me, strike me as a team that, I don't know, they just too busy drawing a house in paint and wait, my Nexus is exploding sort of thing, you know? Like, I think, especially in the regular season, they're not going to care because they're going to make playoffs. Doesn't matter what seeding they get in playoffs, they're going to, I mean, let's be honest, they're going to finish first anyway, but regardless, they make playoffs, they're going to get to the finals probably at least. You know, unless there's some kind of monumental collapse from the inside, Mickey's wrist finally falls off or something like that and they have to start Promiscu. Like, I don't think, I mean, I think they lost both games of Promiscu in the spring split.
Yes, they did.
But at the same time, I think that if Promiscu did play now, G2 would be, there's a good chance G2 still wouldn't lose because now they've had a lot of time to play with him. Like they've trained with him through MSI and everything as well. So I don't think he as a player is necessarily the reason why they lost those two games, but just as a team, it throws you out of sync, right? And Mickey is fucking good as well. So good luck filling his shoes. But yeah, I just think they'll do some cocky shit and they'll just throw a game here and there, honestly. Do I think they have the potential to go 18-0 if they mega try-harded? Absolutely. But I also think actually there is a, if I could bet on, let's say it's the start of season 5 summer and the start of season 9 summer, you know, Fnatic where they had that, was that summer where they had the perfect
2015 summer, I think.
Yeah. That team with, you know, Rainova and Huni and Yellowstar versus this G2, which team's going to have the perfect split? I say the Fnatic 2015
for sure,
because the style they play back then was, they were like Koreans in EU, whereas now it's like the whole style that you play League of Legends is different. And I think the Korean style, if you weren't good at it, was like unbeatable, like really hard to beat, which is why last Worlds was like the only time like Western teams had beaten Korea in like a best of 5 or China in a best of 5 That wasn't like a third seed or something.
I don't even think it's about like the playstyle thing. I think this G2 is potentially the best team in the world. That Fnatic wasn't potentially the best team in the world. No way, no how. Like, there were Korean teams that were better than Fnatic. And I think the gap between this G2 and rest of Europe is still bigger than that Fnatic and rest of Europe. The real big difference for me is the discipline between two teams. Like, that Fnatic was incredibly disciplined, and they approached every game like it was like a finals game 5. Like, they were very, very serious, and they were incredibly uptight and incredibly structured, where this G2 is very loose, and the first word I would use to describe them is definitely not disciplined. Like, they're laughing in games, they're talking about, oh, we can get this one more kill here, like, lol, let's make sure we fountain dive. Like, this is not an 18-0 team. This team is, like, incredibly fucking strong, and this team is better than that Fnatic 2015, but I think that Fnatic 2015 was 18-0 for a reason, and this G2 won't be. And it's not because they aren't the best team, and it's not because they are worse than the 2015 Fnatic.
Yeah, I mean, Delo, was it Delo or Delo? Delo, yeah. There's a pro player with a very similar name, and I always get them mixed up. He was cracking the whip on Fnatic 2015, like for sure. Like, and I think he even got like an MVP or something. It was almost like a jokey.
Yeah, it was the last week.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Mega disciplined lineup, whereas Grabs for G2, I don't even know how much influence he has on draft, honestly. Like, realistically, I'm not saying Grabs is like a bad coach by any means. I think, I think
they just have free reign. If they want to do something crazy, they're allowed to, right?
If Perks is like, I think Nico's good here, Perks will lock in Nico, that kind of thing, right? I think it's a very different environment between the two teams for sure.
I want to defend Grabs a bit because, well, not that like you insulted him, it's they have a very outward persona of being jokey and of being like kind of troll, but in their like G2 movie, and also if you watch their stuff enough, they definitely do have a serious mode that they don't show. And yeah, they come off as like they don't give a fuck and they just do random shit, but from their prep and from like seeing a little bit of a window on how they operate, I do think when it comes down to draft, when it comes down to actually fixing stuff, like Grabs is a good coach and they do remain very serious, and the outward image is not the same as how they are like when it is just them and the cameras are off.
To be fair, I have seen a lot of Grabs on Twitter saying things like, yeah, that draft's unplayable, sorry boys, whenever they lose, so.
Sure. No, I also get the vibe as well that part of why they're actually allowed to do all the trash talk and mess around and play all these fun games and do what they want in the draft is because the whole concept, and this is something I always used to actually preach back in the day when coaching was still early becoming a thing in League, is like one of the things you need to do is you don't like the actual ideal for a Western team would never be the Korean approach where it's like you have this very strict top-down hierarchy and you just play, you're just a cog in the machine, because that's just not the way Westerners think of themselves. Like, you want to be heard for your opinions, you want to be valued for your contributions to the team. You will do some things that will help the team, but sometimes you want to have input directly yourself. So what I think like Ocelot at the top and then Grabs as a coach have cleverly done is rather than bring that whole hierarchy in that particular way, especially with a team of like nearly all superstar players who've been some of the best players in all of the teams they've been in the past, is they've made it like, yeah, you can have a lot of say in what happens, but like the responsibility's on you in that case. So if you pick something ridiculous in the draft, the idea is like, yeah, well, you know what? The team then doesn't just take the fall for that and be like, well, we just didn't know what we were doing. No, you have to admit as well, like, yeah, I fucked that one up. I shouldn't have done that one. Or it works, and then you get to say, hey, it was a genius one-off from me, I've never played that before, but I used it and it worked. That's kind of a clever way to do it, because then the player has to also think twice before he goes too crazy on that one. Because I tell you what, there's so many teams, as people on camera who know people behind the scenes, the amount of times we can't say when we know that actually, well, the real reason why they did this particular weird draft that the coaches get inflamed for is he can't say that his star player just refuses to play like a super meta AD carry, let's say, that's in the meta that he can't pick, and it was left open, and the other team knows that, and they left it open on purpose to bait him in, and actually the coach has done the right thing by not picking. We can't do that, and so when the coach gets flamed, sometimes it's unfair. So I kind of like that at least there's transparency to doing it. So when it is fun, when it was a serious one, like someone really thought it was a great one-off pick. And then on the other aspect, like whether they can go 18-0, I actually like the way you framed it collectively, because I would agree with Loco. I think it's a better team than Season 5. but like the style and mentality of the season 5 team was way more set to be able to go undefeated. Like one of the problems I think actually is a killer with this lineup is not only do they generally try more wacky drafts and they do look like they sometimes fuck around, but even worse, I think their playing style exacerbates that. Because since in the mid game, they might have the biggest advantage in the mid game of like any team I've ever seen relative to the league that they were in. That makes you feel like you can win every game no matter what draft it is and no matter what happens in the first 10 minutes. So that feeling, unfortunately, it will win you more games, but it also will make you lose extra games counterintuitively because you'll think that, it's fine that, you know, we picked a weird draft. You know what? We'll make it work when we lost that first. You'll actually, in some ways, be a little bit looser because you always feel like you can come back, you know, whereas the thing, and I've mentioned this on past episodes that I always had a lot of respect for with the season 5 Fnatic, is I know that must have taken a lot of diligent effort from Daylor just outside of the game to keep them on track and to keep them focused on the next opponent and to make them still play against the worst team in the league when they were, I don't know, let's say 12-0 up and not think this will be easy, still focus on that game. Like, that's incredibly hard. And I don't think you'll probably ever see another team in a major region go undefeated as a result. Like, I think every team will always have the one game or the one game that was badly sore. That's why it's in some ways it's fitting if that Fnatic team gets to keep it, because they were the only team I've ever seen from the West that had that level of pure lockdown discipline where they really somehow did keep the same energy from game 1 to game 18, that's amazing. It shouldn't happen again, realistically.
I wonder if Daylor, if he'd actually kept with coaching and stuff, whether he'd be kind of like the Western Chrono. Okay, Chrono.
That is the big question, isn't it? Especially because here's the thing, right? As far as I know from the players I've known in Fnatic and around the Fnatic org, he was actually never like the mastermind thinker. Like, he had some game insight, but actually he heavily relied on his analysts at the time. Hence why some of those people had got jobs quite quickly afterwards, you know. But as far as I can tell, he was the first Western coach who did a really great job outside of the game. Like, actually had people being somewhat disciplined, didn't let a lot of like fractious things happen, you know. So the question with that is like, could you have maintained it going forwards? I'd love to have seen it. It would certainly be kind of cool if he'd kept, you know, if you'd had half a decade of coaching. But I also do kind of feel like that's a great skill set to have. But sooner or later, I think the in-game stuff would probably kill you in terms of being the best coach.
So my theory on Daylor is, say he got someone that could help with the in-game, like long-term, right? Someone that was incredibly smart about in-game, so that part isn't an issue. He would still have problems long-term. I think like that system and that structure is not something long-term sustainable for the West. Like,
you'll also, I think, burn people out if you make them have to try and focus on that, right?
So I think that was an incredible split, and that was like a miracle run, and we should remember it as so. But I think if Daylor coached long-term for Fnatic, they would run into problems, and they wouldn't be that top team for such a long time.
Think, look at the personnel he had. On the one hand, right, I give him massive props for doing that with 3 rookies. Like Steelback, Huni, and Rainover were nobodies in the context when they came to the league. So on the one hand, that's a massive bonus. But I actually think that also, at the end, once he set the system up, helped. Because rookies are going to be the most open to listening to you. They've never competed before, so in theory, they're all going to be super hungry. Even the players he had remaining that were veterans. Reckless had just been on the Elements team, which is fucking terrible. He's really wanting to redeem himself. Yellow Star, I don't know if people know this, but was thinking of retiring before even that split. And obviously did retire after he did the victory lap, if you want to call it that, with TSM. Like, this is a guy who was at the end of his career. So his motivation was, one last year, one last split. If we can just do this. So I actually think he also had the perfect personnel for that. I think it's actually, you can tie that into the G2 angle. I even think part of what makes G2 so special is that somehow they've got this like-minded group of players. Like, what's weird is there's plenty of teams have like a wacky guy or a guy who loves to play super aggressively or the guy who wants to be the solo guy, but there's not many teams that have 5 players like that, you know. So usually a team has like the super serious guy in or the bad player but who has a good personality. Like, G2 also, I think, has a unique blend of individuals. It's not the right blend to win every single regular season game. If anything, I have to say, they haven't done it in this team because it just hasn't been a problem. But I want to see in future years if they keep this G2 lineup together, because the problem is it will burn you out if you play every split and every national tournament. You're at 100 out of 100 every time in terms of intensity level. So I want to see if they ever, actually, this comes back to bite them, because if you think of the classic SOAS, Expeke, Origin and Fnatic teams, for example, those guys knew what burnout was. So they knew when it's a split, like, I don't really have to be in peak form in this split till about, let's say, week 6, week 7. If I can pick it up then, I've definitely got a playoff spot anyway. Really, I only need 2nd or 3rd seed, probably going to win. And, they would like almost cynically time out their split and their performance so that they only gave the best when it was the best moment. Now, that's super hard to do, but that's where I kind of think the trajectory for this G2 team is in future years.
Doesn't Uzi as well, like, didn't he literally, like...
Oh, he always...
Take
what he literally does is in the spring split every year, he usually basically doesn't play at all until after Chinese New Year, which is obviously like a month or so into the year. So, like, he literally just, like, they use a sub. But now, to be fair, they have got 1 billion AD carries in China, so it works. But, yeah, they kind of know, like, let's not burn this dude out. He's been playing half a decade every single match, pretty much.
So.
Let's talk about other teams.
Let's not do the thing, though, where we go from the top of the scoreboard all the way down. So let's just pick out an interesting team now.
Oh, there's a team I want to talk about.
Oh, I've got one that I'd like. Oh, go on then. Who is it then?
Vitality. They are
Vitality.
so fucking god-awful. They are so goddamn bad. And I fucking called it. I knew this, like, I knew, like, when they were good in spring, like, the whole just play your own meta, play your own style, and, like, this being unstructured and this being so aggressive early, like, this train had to crash. They were going to crash and burn, and right now, they look so fucking bad right now. I think their bot lane is literally the worst in all of LEC, and potentially the worst bot lane in the West, in all the Tier 1 leagues. Attila and Jack Troll look so god-awful.
I'm surprised, like, because Thorin, you were literally harping on about, play your own style. Like the West will never succeed adapting to the East, right?
Sure.
And you're saying, Loco, that's now unsustainable.
I think the distinction here is that Loco, like, obviously, if your style is objectively terrible, don't play that style then. Like, here's the idea, play the style that fits you best. And that's the thing, actually, that's actually maybe a good point to bring up. This is my question, though, Loco, is... The reason I'm torn on the Vitality issues, I also agree. Like, when they won games last split, my philosophy was, like, you have to give them credit. They did win the game, so they did do something right. But of all the things I saw, a lot of it looked massively abusive. And when I say abusive, what I specifically mean by that is, like, let's say there's a play I could make in the game, right? And if I do it, let's say it only has a 40% chance of working. But if it works, I now have a big lead in the game. So that means, like, the 40% of the time it works, great. I might even win the game off that. But if 60% of the time I'd utterly fail and fuck the whole game up for myself, that isn't the correct way to actually play League of Legends. Like, if it works and you get to abuse that, like, nice, I got the 40%. Like, that will win you some games. But first of all, in the long run, you obviously should lose. It's a 40% chance. And then secondly, most other teams aren't doing that. They're not looking for, like, like, if someone plays SK Telecom, they're not generally looking for, like, the 1 in a million home run out of the park. Like, what if we just did something mental and it won the game? Even they're still trying to play real League of Legends against SK Telecom. So the real problem here is it's the difference between trying to win one game, a best of one, and actually be a better team. And I think the problem Vitality got caught up in is obviously all the regular season games are best of one. So they were like, fuck it, choose like half of them. It's like, that's not really going to work to be actual top team, though. If you really want to represent Europe and be a good team, you're going to have a fundamental style that works against most opponents in most cases without, like, you just doing something ridiculous in the first 3 levels of the game. So, like, that always should have worn out. So the question, I think, is actually what FoxDrop was hinting at there, which is this, Loco, is it actually the right style for their team, though? Like, could their team play a different way and be a good team?
Well, the thing is, like, it's when we talk about, this meta is all about fighting, this meta is all about skirmishes, this meta is all about solo laners being good. There's a method to the madness. Like, you don't just, like, walk into the river and you're like, okay, guys, let's fucking take a fight. Like, there are certain visions you fight for, there are certain timings you fight for, there are certain matchups you fight for. There is a system in place. The system just isn't, let's farm, and then let's group buff for Dragon, and then let's group buff for Baron. That was the old system. Like, now the new system is about contesting for vision at certain times, contesting for priority when you get certain power spikes, contesting on certain jungle camps. Like, there is still a system in place, and Vitality just has no read on that system. And this whole fucking, like, bullshit narrative, like, that was pushed about play your own style, where they played aggressively and they played, like, fearlessly, and it worked at Worlds, like, that got blown out of fucking proportion. And, like, this new Vitality team, the one with Mowgli looks so fucking lost. Like, they have no idea when to invade. They have no idea when to be aggressive. Like, Cabochard is rotting away his best years in Vitality. Like, that's my big problem with Vitality. It's not like play your own style. It's like your own style has to be systematic. Like, your own style has to match up to some of the parts in the meta.
Those are some very strong words, Loco.
Some very honest and truthful words.
I don't know how much I can disagree with you, though. It's always a bit mind-blowing for me, at least, like how a team can go from actually, I mean, they were good at Worlds, like, realistically speaking. Like,
oh, they exceeded expectations, of course. Yeah,
they exceeded expectations, and you know, are like one game away from getting out of group, sort of thing, right? Like, and they lost. They won the hard games and lost the easy games, right? Like, this is a team that when you look at them and the way they play, for me, I was thinking like, yeah, this is. I mean, I had an image in my head of what Vitality was, and then when we come into spring, they start off. I think it's like 7-2 their start or something like that. Like, it's a good start,
sure.
And then they completely just fuck it up, and then they come into summer, and now they just look like genuinely like they won't come last because XL exists, but probably like a 9th place team. And I'm just like, the only thing that changed was that Kikis left and Modi came in. And I was a huge advocate for Kikis when he was joining, like the Kikis effect, right? Like, genuinely, the difference between Vitality with Gideus and Vitality with Kikis was astronomical. The way that Kikis played the game and the way that he was like his whole play style, he was prioritizing just like running into the enemy jungle like constantly. Or he picks things like Trundle into Brox's Nocturne. This is when Fnatic was like the team, right? And just fucked him up. And it's like, just for someone to have the confidence to do that, and just the way that he played was really something that Vitality then thrived from, because that opens up breathing room for someone like Jizuke, for someone like Cabochard, who are aggressive and who are very talented and do take the, as you were saying, Thorin, like the kind of, well, you described it as like the 40-60 plays, but say it's like 55-45, right? Jizuke's on that shit, right?
Sure.
So I thought it was like a really good stylistic fit, and they're a really good team. Then Kikis leaves, Mowgli comes in, and I'm just
does make you wonder what is happening with Kikis in all these teams. Like, I feel like at this point, I'm going to take a gamble. Like, because every team he's in, right? Initially, he actually seems to be like a boon for the team. He adds to the team. He brings something they didn't have. They were lacking. They usually have like a little immediate spike, and then somehow, after the honeymoon period ends, they just inevitably kick him. So I actually feel like at this point, it must be an out of the game issue. Like, maybe this guy's just like addicted to anchovies, and his farts stink or something, and they're just like, fuck this, get another jungler, turn that fan on and get another fucking jungler in here now. It's like, and he's like, I won't give up anchovies. Listen, they mean a lot to my people. I don't fucking know, whatever. Like,
dude, did you guys see
his
his tweets?
Something weird like that. It's got to be something weird. Nobody said.
Did you guys see his tweets as like Vitality's like losing in LEC? He's like, do you remember sometimes like you leave your ex-girlfriend and you realize your new girlfriend isn't the best and you want your ex-girlfriend back? That's okay. Completely off topic though, but that's okay. And then he's like, oh, I still haven't unpacked my bags, and it's old, like, what is it, Kiki's, like, the Vitality jersey with, like, the gaming gear and stuff. Like, I'm surprised, like, he wants to come back to Vitality after, like, the shit show that it was. And, like, after them dunking him.
Loco, who does Kikis play for?
No one.
I think I believe he was recently, last split, I think he played in, like, the National Leagues or something. Am I wrong on that?
He was on Rogue in Spring Split.
Right, there you go. So exactly, Loco. That's the reason he wants to come back to Vitality, is because, to be fair, it would actually help his career. Like, he's not in a great spot himself, is it? It's not like he left and then went to G2 and was now the champion or something. Like, it would still be a step up to be in LEC and beyond Vitality. And I would guess as well, to be fair, the reason he's saying that is, and this is a legit concern, he probably thinks that they also agree with him and think, why didn't we just get Mowgli, like this Korean player who... we don't know this guy from fucking Adam. He just played on a Freak of Freaks. That's all we know. Like, well, I bet he probably thinks they look back and think, why don't we just get the old gang back together? He might not even be wrong. I mean, as FoxDrop says here, it wouldn't necessarily be a crazy move to bring him back in and try and recreate the old lineup. Because I don't think Mowgli himself individually was bad in Vitality. I just I don't know what the fucking connection is between him and his team. And I do think in his team that they pretty much just told him like a very one-dimensional way to play, and he just does it every game. I don't see a lot of I feel as though he controls the game or has great comms with people or whatever, but I can't put too much on him. He's just a lone Korean in the middle of nowhere.
Maybe veteran with right. Like, EU just does not do well with Korean imports, and Korean imports are overrated.
I think we've just got the wrong ones, unfortunately, mate. Like, especially because at the moment, it's obviously like the talent is popping off, and probably actually, I'll give credit to Riot. The National League scene seems to have helped in that respect. All the positions seem rounded out now. I still think there are some Koreans you can bring over. She's got to bring them to the right team.
Outside of Dreams, outside of Ignar, outside of Gorilla, I don't think there are good performing Korean imports. I think those are the only three.
Some would say inside of that group, some of them aren't good performing Korean imports. Suck it, bitch.
I legitimately like, so people are mentioning stuff like Expect and Trick, and they're like just okay. Like, Korean imports should be the ones carrying your team, and like none of the Korean imports are really carrying their team.
Yeah, Expect was doing his best to drag Excel's corpse over into some wins in Spring Split. I actually think Gorilla is like, I don't know, considering how high he's probably like the biggest import, like biggest name.
He's the biggest by far, yeah. The biggest has to be him, and I think maybe Spirit. Those are the two I'd put down.
Yeah, I think I asked someone about someone involved in one of the teams about Gorilla last split, and he just said Gorilla is super average, like just super average. That's the way he phrased it, and I mean, I can't disagree with it. It's like you can't pinpoint Misfits like lack of success on Gorilla, but is he really like cabochard in Vitality Hell? Like, not really.
All you need to know, exactly, it's not like anyone ever says free him from this team. Oh, poor Gorilla. No, everyone just kind of goes like, I think he might in some way be part of the problem. You know, no one's saying he is, but I doubt he's blameless, put it that way.
Well, the thing is, when you're importing a Korean, you're paying them an exceptional salary. You're like, any Koreans that's coming over, like, at least for the big names, right? If you're importing like a small time Korean, like, that in itself is a problem. But when the Koreans are coming over, you're paying them a big salary. You also have to incorporate them into the culture. Team dynamic becomes more difficult to work with. Sometimes you have to get a translator. There's all these difficulties that come with importing a Korean, and usually the only time it's worth it is when they are fucking exceptional and they are one of the best players on your team and one of the best players in the league, and that just hasn't been the case for Korean imports.
So, you know, something sick I just realized is, like, here's the thing, you definitely could import really good Koreans. I mean, there's no point bringing up Hooney because no one knew he was going to be that good when he joined. It's like, that's not really a fair one. But in that vein, like, here's an example, Loco. This would never have happened, but let's say bizarrely, instead of going to LCS, Crown had ended up in Europe. Yeah. Here's the difference. If you put Crown on like a bottom LEC team, you could play a fucking split push strategy all day long, and you could win a lot of games with that guy. Like, that guy's a very good player. He wouldn't even need to have an amazing synergy with the rest of the team. Like, that you could get a lot done. I also think that's another factor. Is like, Europe, traditionally, I mean, it was so centered around the mid, and you're never going to recruit a mid. Like, there's so many reasons that go against like imports working. Whereas in NA, if you look, when you get the big Korean import in NA, you basically build your whole team around him. You just start from square one, or you kick people out. Whereas in Europe, generally, they don't really tend to build teams that way, I don't think. You're not going to get a Korean first and then build the team. Even Gorilla was added to a team that was being composed. Mm-hmm. And if anything, was probably added to the wrong team if you look back now. Mm-hmm. So I think in the future it could happen. Obviously, the fact that more money's in the region means it probably will happen, actually. I think some teams will try. And I will say, like, we can't use examples like Mickey. Like, that's a bad signing for almost any region. That's not Europe specific. I think he'd do badly in most regions, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's only been like 2 games for Mickey, and one of those games was literally coin flip, lost at level 1 against Misfits.
You know, though, FoxDrop, this is one of the problems, right? One of the reasons people often say I'm a contrarian is because I just try to read the pulse of the community. So, for example, with the whole Mickey thing, because of what happened on Golden Guardians and the fact he was kind of worthless when he was on Team Liquid, I notice everyone makes out like this guy's a complete idiot, pure shit player, never be good. Like, I remember when this guy was on that Rebels Anarchy team, he was fucking popping off. Like, he was having good games in LCK. He wasn't a top player by any stretch of the imagination, but he definitely, like, within his own world, had good games. He wasn't trash. So I can see why teams are willing to gamble on him. I agree. It sounds like some of the scenarios within those teams were a clusterfuck when he got there. But I think people have gone too far now where he's just like the new guy everyone has to just bash super hard. Well, I wouldn't sign him either, but he's not pure trash, Bradway.
It just makes no sense for him to be on Excel. Like, it makes absolutely no sense, yeah. For anyone to import a Korean mid laner to Europe unless, like, they're fucking faker status, because Europe has so many good mids. And also, like, my thing with Mickey and my thing with imports in general is when you import people that aren't, like, going to be really disciplined and really dedicated to the cause, it is not going to work out. Like, importing is not easy. It's not like you take a good player and then you put him in Europe or you put them in NA and they're just going to be as good. There's so many factors that go into it and they ignore so much of that. And also, like, when David talked about picking up Mickey in the small, like, Twitter piece that they had, they're like, yeah, we talked to his previous coaches in Korea and it seemed like he was fine. Like, why are you talking to the coaches in Korea? Talk to the coaches that had him when he was imported. Like, talk to the last Golden Guardians coaches. Like, what the fucking hell? Like, I really cannot defend the Mickey decision.
Doesn't David Lim have good, like, a history with Mickey?
No, he never worked with Mickey.
Know.
He never worked with
him. Are you sure about that?
Oh, Mickey on TL.
Loco's best buds with him.
No, Mickey on TL. Mickey, he did work with Mickey on TL. And
Well, your mistake, Loco. You only don't know one of your own best friends in his life. But FoxDrop here, who's barely probably ever met the fucking guy, knows way more. So, yeah, continue on.
I saw him in the corridor.
Yeah, if you can fill in it. Well, if you saw him once, you can probably fill Loco in on the rest of the shit. Like maybe tell him his birthday, everything. Yeah, so.
I don't believe it. I think Mickey on Excel is such a bad pickup.
So, Mickey, like, I kind of want to put a cap on Mickey on Excel because, like, I feel like it's like all speculation and he's played 2 games, right? So it's like impossible to really say like anything concrete. For me, Mickey on Excel is definitely a David Lin connection thing. Like 100%, that's why he's on the team. But at the same time, I think that so Excel needed something because they had Expect, who was good. I'll say like he's good, right? Like
I think he's proven at this point in time. He was on an amazing team, he was on a bad team, he plays pretty much the same no matter what.
Right, so like Expect is fine. Kadril is inconsistent but has his moments where you look at him and you think, okay, maybe this guy can do something. Maybe, you know, as he rounds out as a player, put him around like a better team, this guy can maybe do something. And then the problem is that the rest of the team is not good. So if you put Mickey in, suddenly now you have a scenario where if he's good, this guy is what XL needs because he's a spark plug in the mid lane, which before they did not have because they had Special and XL, and both of those guys were underperforming. But the problem is that for me, it's a big if, and it's like you say, Loco, I 100% agree with you. I don't think you should import import mids into EU unless they are like god tier status and you think they're actually going to like really elevate a team. And it's like, this is the issue with the whole kind of franchising thing, right? Is like XL, they had Jeskla, they had Special. These guys are rookies, and they looked kind of bad, right? They didn't look great. But the problem is they've been dropped after one split because XL actually do have pressure to field a more competitive roster, and so they've picked up Hishon and they've picked up Mickey. And for me, Hishon is a known commodity, is not going to change XL around, and I think Mickey is not the big name that is going to ignite the team. He could do, but I think that there is a very slim chance that he will. And so now it's actually a problem because they're being put under pressure, whether this is internal or external, I don't know for sure, but I don't think that developing the talent's kind of gone out the window, right? Jesko hasn't been retained. He's not playing on XL Academy or anything like that, or XL's regional team. So it's like, I don't really know. I don't think
along those lines,
they're in a picky situation.
That's basically the biggest mistake they've made. Like you say, they've kind of just gone between two positions. They've gone from either they could, like, here's the thing. If you wanted to be clever, what I would have done after the spring split is basically what you alluded to at the end. I would have said, you know what? we've just come into LEC. We're one of the last teams accepted. You know, a lot of free agents had already been signed. We put together this team at the last minute. You know, we know we're not going to win the league yet, but we're building towards the future. Some of our players are rookies. We're going to try them out. We're going to give them a full chance. Hopefully, some of them develop into our stars one day. If they don't, we'll move along. And over time, you know, we'll build a winning culture. We'll find our identity. See, I'd do all the great marketing lines, and I'd make it true. Like, I'd give out Mystiques a whole bunch more games. He looked like he had some potential when he played a few times. I'd give Special at least a few more games. I mean, he gave fucking Exile so many games when that guy was about 3 years since he was even vaguely good. Like, I'd give all the rookies a lot more chance because, like you say, it's not like the signings they made were game changers. Like, if that had been forgiven instead of Hjarnan, now I'd start to be interested. If instead of Mickey, that was some beast National League mid laner, now maybe there is a chance to make a playoff run. The problem is, even if Mickey plays okay and Hjarnan plays as you'd expect, like, you know, average level ADC, it's not going to even make you a playoff team. And even worse, going to next year, you're not going to double down on that old lineup again. You're probably going to wipe the board across and try and get big free agents. So at this point, it just makes the summer split kind of a bit pointless. Like, I don't really see how you've accomplished either goal. You're not going to be a good team. Like, this is still going to be a bottom feeder. And you haven't even, as you said there, the killer is you haven't even got a chance to find out if those rookies ever will be good. If Jeskler one day becomes a great player, it's going to be an egg on your face, Excel. You're going to look like the idiots. If he doesn't, you lost nothing anyway. It's not like having one split of Hjarnan's the key. And even worse, Hjarnan and Mickey are not players you're going to build around 3 years from now.
Yes, they're not going to be the long term. Are they even going to be your 2020 players? That's my question. Is Mickey even going to start for you in 2020? Like,
because I always think the unfair thing people did in spring was band Excel and Rogue together. No. I agree. The Rogue LEC lineup that they initially started with wasn't good. It was about as bad as the Excel team. The difference is Rogue the whole time had a strategy. Their strategy was they had a very good team in the Polish league, the Ultra League. They were actually one of the best in Europe. And crucially, they had some rookies on those teams and beginning players who one day, as you're now seeing in LEC, could be brought up and actually they now maybe have some sort of a crack at making an outside playoff run. Like, they are becoming a team that's developing rookies and now is going for the playoff run. Like, that's a way better model for how to run your team, despite the fact, by the way, Rogue have a lot of staff themselves with pasts that people aren't huge fans of or don't have a lot of faith in. You know, I'd say they've done a much better job. Excel, I don't even know what that is. They're just in no man's land for me.
Here's the interesting point, though. With, like, I don't understand why XL imploded everything after spring split. Even their coaching staff, they got rid of Ferndog and put in David Lim. They got rid of Jarge as well. Jarge, he's gone too. Like, the infrastructure's gone, the players, the personnel, it's all changed. It's like one split. I don't fully understand it, but you know, whatever. That's an internal stuff that we can only speculate about. But like you say with Rogue, so I'm going to challenge you on when you say I have a better strategy. If Rogue's academy team sucks, like, because it could have sucked, let's say, because these things happen, and they weren't able to pick up the players they wanted to pick up, is that suddenly now their strategy is the exact same, it's just the players have kind of fucked it up? Because sometimes this happens, right? When you pick up players who you think are top-tier players, and then they just kind of fall off a little bit. That could have happened with Rogue's lineup too. And then suddenly we're sitting here and Rogues still suck, and we're like, yeah, Rogue's strategy is really bad. That's why I kind of think it's like, you're playing a bit of...
Yeah, but XL didn't even do what Rogue did. They didn't even give their rookies the chance, and they just cut them after one split. So that's the distinction, I would say.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I agree with that. I think they...
Like, here's the thing. One thing I will say is I actually think Rogue did get lucky in as much as they didn't just have, like, one decent... They had, like, a whole fucking bunch of players on that team. Like, It actually turned out, as you can see now, that most of the main team's getting replaced, basically. So, if anything, they did lock into a little bit of that. Like, but that's the other thing. At least one or two of those players, I think, would have been good. I'm amazed how many have been good, actually, now. They probably got lucky in that sense, but I think they had a better chance. And also, even the people they tried as rookies are better than the fucking people XL got. Because, again, I don't know how much of this really is that they were the last team to put everyone together, etc., but it does look as though it was the most horrid lineup in the fucking league.
They were like the last people to get into franchising, though, I'm pretty sure. Like, there were other orgs who were shoot in, and then there was, like... issues there, and then XL swooping in the last moment. So maybe that came into it. I don't know.
Sure. Right. All right. Let's move up then. Let's talk about... I think another team that's very interesting is Splice. So this was the squad where in spring, if people remember, the famous like spectrum that you had in LEC was at the ridiculous end. You had the Vitality team who did all this ridiculous stuff, cheese early on, and then just win the game before like a real game starts. And on the other hand, you had Splice, where it's like, if you can't beat us in 30 minutes, we will beat you in all these late game team fights. Like, this is what we do, motherfucker. Like, you know, we've got a clock until that point, but if you get to that point, it's Kobe time, basically, and he will win the game in these team fights. So, Splice, this split, it looks as though they're starting to move towards a less one-dimensional approach to winning the game. What do you think of this Splice at the moment, FoxDrop? Are they good?
I think Splice's success, like almost 100%, is going to revolve around Humanoid, or at least like for Splice to kind of evolve out of, as you described, that being their identity, where they are exceptional at team fighting, and they often draft in such a way where it enables them to do that, which gives them that. You know, people sometimes see them as like that resident sleeper team, when it's actually not a bad way to play, because if you look at the teams that Splice beat consistently and the teams that they lose to, Splice very, very, very ever rarely lose to teams below them in the standings, because it's a very like methodical like style to play. So, but it does mean that they're not necessarily able to kind of, if they go up against better opponents, then you know they kind of get punished for it, right? So for me, Humanoid has to be the X factor to change that, because everyone else on that roster, in my opinion, I think is good, but I think Kobe is like the very reliable carry. Vizicachi has his moments. I would say he's less consistent now than he has been in his past career, but still has high highs in my opinion. Like they're a very solid roster. That Humanoid played really bad this weekend, and I think if Splice actually want to jump out from being like the gatekeeper team to actually like potentially a top 4 team, which I think they actually could be. I genuinely think Splice could be potentially a top 4 team. If we look at the competition being the top 3 is obviously like G2, Fnatic and Origin, then honestly there's like a lot of teams who can slot it into that kind of number 4 spot, and I think Splice could definitely be that team. And for me, Humanoid needs to, I don't want to say needs to step up, but he has to kind of be Splice's like X factor, you know, like when Jizuke came into the league and he's like whipping his dick out. And I think Humanoid needs to be a little bit more like that, you know, and now he's got his rookie split out of the way, and hopefully he can find some confidence and not play like he did this weekend. Then
problem with that though, mate, is that for me is the killer with the Splice team overall. Is for everyone who isn't Humanoid and who plays in this team, I think it's exactly the right team for all of those players. If you look at like the identities of those players, how they fit together, they're all doing a great job. I think they're all, some of them, except for Vizicachi, maybe as you say, most of them are in like career best form. They're looking really good at the moment. The problem I have is like, I actually feel like the Splice strengths and the fact that they have so heavily they emphasize fucking scaling more than those stone men in fucking old Valeria, whatever it was in Game of Thrones season 6, I'm going to say. Whatever, it was a poll. So anyway, the problem with that is...
past season 5, mate. I'm
don't bother. Just quit there, mate. It wasn't worth it. As soon as a certain main character gets killed at a castle, don't bother watching beyond that. Right, so anyway, the point I'm going to make is this. I think that style works for Kobe's strengths. He was never a great lane AD carry. I think it works awesome for Cersei. You can see the guy obviously in his career fucking loves to power farm, so it's all brilliant stuff for them. Vizicachi is just not going to play carries all the time. What we've learned is he never really was just a total carry player. He just played in a carry fashion when it was tanks and bruisers, and actually given the choice still goes to Poppy anyway. So to me, the one player, I actually think Splice holds Humanoid back. Like when I watch Humanoid play the whole spring split and now in summer, if this guy was on one of the more aggressive teams, this guy'd be fucking one of the stars of the league. Like, you know, that whole thing you had, Loco, where you were saying like that the rookie crop of mids in spring, none of them really did look like they were going to be the next Febervern or Caps or Perks. Humanoid should have been that guy. It's just his team never gave him the options. He was always in this scenario where he's playing like a fucking mage or something, and they just go into like the late game, and then it's like in the team fight, Kobe gets all the kills on Sivir, and it's like, oh well, you did all right with your 2-1-2 scoreline, Humanoid. It's like if that guy had gone to Fnatic, I'm telling you, he'd have popped off. Like I think he's legit as fuck. It's just I don't think it's the right team for him. So whatever, it doesn't kill them, and certainly I would agree. As a result, if he could somehow play even better on this team, he's the difference maker. He's the only one who has like superstar potential, in my opinion. Like as much as everyone's loving Kobe's performance at the moment, this is the peak. Like I don't think it goes much beyond this, and I think actually this style helps him his strengths as it is. So I think overall, They are a good team. I'd even say I think they could very well be the 4th best team. I think that's quite a reasonable expectation.
Wow.
Outside of Humanoids, a very respectable team. Like they've got a bunch of players that are all just good caliber LEC players.
Who do you think could come in 4th then? Because if you think about it, it's not too many teams. Like because like Loco, you have quite a It seems like you really don't agree with Splice team.
G2, Fnatic,
like,
Origin. Those are the easy top 3.
Right.
And then after that, we get to like Schalke, Misfit, Splice. Like why I don't believe in Splice as much as you guys. I think Jersey actually has stepped up a lot more. And as FoxDrop, you mentioned, like Humanoid this season, and especially last weekend, was kind of meh and like pretty much non-existent.
It was awful. It was shit.
I think
shit last weekend.
Like where is like Splice developing? Also, the other team, that I forgot that Chas mentioning is SK. Like, where is Splice going to develop? Like, for them to get to another dimension, like, they need to be good at early game. Like, that is the next dimension that they really need to push. I really don't think Kabe is really going to change this game. I'm not sure about Humanoid, and I don't think Vegetachi is going to change this game. So it's really reliant on Humanoid and Jersey. That's where your spine and your backbone of your early game has to come from. And I'm not sure how much faith I have in that team. Like, I think SK is a little bit more promising. I think Schalke is more promising. I even think Misfits with potentially Kirei Leader or Kirei Febevin is going to be more promising in terms of being a top 4 team.
Always told you, Loco, I'll always take what is now over potential.
But what if now is like just... It's just so stale and it's just so uninspiring.
Put it this way. If they are the 4th best team, it's not going to be that sexy at playoffs. Like, it's going to be the top 3 deciding who wins the championship, obviously. And even then, probably just G2. But that's the point, is that's exactly why Splice could be the 4th best team, Loco. It's because, it might not be sexy, but they can play effective League of Legends. And I even agree with actually a point Veteran made, which is, you know what? Of all the problems to have in a team, not being that great in sort of like the early to mid game, not really the worst problem to have, actually. That's something that actually you could start to, like, for example, you could go the Fnatic approach and just have a few band-aid fixes that work early on. They used to pick scaling shit and just get through the early. Like, that's a way easier thing to learn than if you went the opposite way and, like Vitality, you were only good early and you weren't a late game team. That's fucking way harder to become a good late game team. So actually, of all the skills to have in a one-dimensional stat, it's not a bad one to have. You can survive a lot with that. It's a pretty good playoff style as well.
I don't know. Splice is just... It's their play style and kind of their demeanor that also makes me underrate them, but they're just not very inspiring as a team for me. They're boring.
I think
they're just European FlyQuest. What do you want? They're European FlyQuest.
FlyQuest ain't looking so hot.
Well, not at the moment. They're not anyway. But again, there's less of those weeks because for whatever reason.
Here's a random question for you. Do you guys think that Pyrion is a good example of like a successful, like good Korean import? SK's mid laner?
We'd have to see more long term, and also I think this split is very, very going to be deterministic of that. I think if he can be
deterministic,
deterministic, or like
I'm
this.
Googling it. Is that actually a word?
I'm pretty sure it is.
It is. It just means it's going to.
It is. Yeah, I love that shit. All right, keep going, Loco. That was fantastic. I'm inspired now.
This split will determine if he was a worthwhile mid laner. I think if SK can clinch that top 4 stop, because who's the jungler? Holy shit. Selfmade making a name for himself, and he needs a little bit more sidekicks. Like Crownshot and Pyrion, if they can be that stable backline, like Sakurai looks good. Dreams looks like one of the best performing imports. So yeah, I think Pyrion is like a key piece in SK doing well. So yeah, depending on how well SK does this split, which is going to rely a lot on Pyrion, we're going to be able to say, oh, this was a good import. Because from what I understood, SK got into the season really late, or SK got into the franchising really late, and they had their mid taken away, right? They had Humanoid taken away from the original Mad Lion core, so they needed to fill the hole right away.
No. Abadage was Mad Lion.
Oh, okay,
Nemesis.
Oh, it was Nemesis. Holy shit!
Let me think. Yes, it was Nemesis.
All three of us got it wrong until the end. Yeah, it was Nemesis like taken away from the core, and they needed to slot in a mid laner right away and make it work. So this is where like a Korean import is really great, where you don't want to run a rookie because of potential development problems, and you already kind of have a set system and you need someone that can function right away. So yeah, if Pyrion, they already made spring playoffs, if they can go to summer playoffs and maybe even go to semis and actually be a top 4 team, then I'll be like, this Korean pickup was actually good for a European team, which is pretty rare to say nowadays.
SK, I love watching SK though. As a team, I feel like they could have very easily gone the route of like XL or Rogue even, just like because the team they fielded was
their spring split lineup did not look that hot at all.
Right,
did not at all look hot.
I mean, you have like Pyrion and Dreams who on paper are incredibly uninspiring imports. Like, you know, really you're gonna import like these kind of B tier Koreans into?
And obviously, no one was hyped about Whirlib in top lane. Like we've seen enough of that in EU. Thanks.
Yeah, like, you know, I just like, and it's like it's funny because Crownie wasn't even like the most rated Crown Shot. No, I think he scored. It wasn't even the most rated like rookie AD coming into this. He was like top 3 pushing, maybe top 5. I mean, I don't want to say like I don't make it sound like he was like a bad prospect coming in, but Jeskler, for example, was the most touted rookie coming into 2019 spring split in the bot lane. And now Crownie's like, Crownshot is like, I think he's decent, but he's not like an X factor for SK. And I think Selfmade and Dreams are very, very good. And now they actually have Sakurai as well, who, as you mentioned, Thorin, like Whirlib was like all right, but that was kind of his peak, was like all right, you know. And I don't think you get much further with Whirlib. And there was some like, well, I think there's been a lot of internal issues with SK actually, but L9 baby. But Sakurai now is in, and he actually looks really good. Like, well, he looked really good in as a rookie, right? Like he was genuinely, like when you watch the Shy just like styling everyone at Worlds, and like the gap between the Shy and every other top laner in Worlds, more or less, that's what Sakurai looks like playing in like national leagues and the EU Masters as well. So I don't think, maybe this is extreme to say, but I don't think I've seen that much of a gap between a rookie and his like competition like coming in. So Sakurai has like this split is going to be huge for SK to squeeze into number 4 as well, because, you know, I do think that if Sakurai becomes what he can be and the rest of the team just keeps the pace that they had in spring split really, then that SK look actually like really, really strong. They held their own against G2, right, in last weekend for like 15-20 minutes. So,
I'd even say that's why actually the Pyrion. Here's the interesting thing: Pyrion's never been the worst player in this lineup, but the reason why I think the discussion will center around him is just because of where the other pieces on the team are that are good. Like the bot lane's doing fine at the moment; it's not exceptional, it's doing fine. Obviously, Sakurai is seen as like the hope of the team because, as you said, he was such a promising guy in the national leagues. And then your best player is the jungler, is a very aggressive playmaking jungler. So as a result, if Pyrion is just an okay mid laner, that isn't going to be enough. It's the obvious position you'd upgrade. You're in Europe. Like, this is a team where I'd agree. If everything else in the team is as it should be, the dream is like next year, you just get another really good EU mid laner. And there you go. You've got a team that could actually be like a top 5, top 4 team in the league. Because that's the thing. They kind of have locked out on a lot of these pickups. Either they did great scouting or they really did just lock out, because every aspect, now that you've got rid of Willem, seems to be upticking.
Pyrion used to be the second best player on this team, I feel like, after Selfmade, and then everyone either developed or got changed out. I think Whirlib was the worst player, and then he got changed out for Sakurai, and Dreams kept developing, Crownshot kept developing, Selfmade was always their best player, so he went from their second best player to potentially their worst player, so he does need to develop to keep up with the rest of the pack and to keep SK well balanced. And as you talked about, like mid and jungle, super fucking important in EU right now, and there is actually a really big opening for the third best mid laner. A lot of people have gave it to Nemesis, but after Cap sending Nuke Duck, it's pretty wide open. So if Pyrion can step up, I think this does bring SK all the way over, and they can be top 4, maybe even top 3.
Oh, and also one other thing to add in is now we actually get to start to discover who Selfmade really is. Because unfortunately, the big problem and the limiting factor on knowing how good he was as a player in spring is that realistically, they weren't even supposed to make playoffs. And in playoffs, they obviously were not supposed to win any series at all. You know, like as a team, he didn't have a proper team around him. And I always say the problem with that, I mean, I'll give you the comparison example would be like when Lera was on the bad envious team, and they were terrible as a team, but he was just having all those pop-off games like early in the game, and then they'd lose anyway. It's like you couldn't say he was the best jungler in the league, because it's like, well, we don't really get to see him play League of Legends. We see him do some cool stuff early, but who knows what would have happened if he did then had the right players to follow up. Maybe he wouldn't have delivered on it. Maybe he would have just fucked up the game, as you could argue happened later in the team when he got onto whatever the squad clutch was the next year. He wasn't that great a player, was he? So the problem with Selfmade is he looked amazing with what he had to work with in spring, but now he actually has like a carry top laner. Now he has a team that's actually had some experience. Now I actually get to see here's the thing, if he really is the best jungler in the league, now's where, like, in the same fashion as when Forgiven came in with Copenhagen Wolves, you'd actually be able to show it. You could really show that you were the team, because when you have like the bad team that you just carry, you can't really know if that's actually the best player, because you're just kind of saying, right, everything good he gets credit for, everything bad not his fault, he's on a bad team. So it's only now you start to get a real sense of who a player is, I think.
It's funny that's actually a very jungle specific thing, or
it does happen a lot with junglers, doesn't it?
Because there was like Lyra's a great example. Rush, didn't he win MVP on Team Impact as well?
Yep.
Mike Young, I would say, is a decent example of that as well, where he looked amazing, got picked up by
pre-TSM, of course.
Yeah, right. And then and you know, I think Selfmade, I don't obviously he's not at that point where he's surrounded by a good team and now looks shit, but just in general, like, that's actually a really interesting point, because I think jungle, I would always consider jungle a role that is so kind of, it's like working in retail, right? Like you're constantly interacting.
Yeah, it's like clean up in aisle 4, please. Like, oh, why is aisle 4 always fucking up? I cleaned that up yesterday. And then at the same time, your manager's like, can I just talk to you? I've got to go to aisle 4. And then someone's like, when you're finished with that, can you see me in aisle 2? Like, I haven't even fucking done aisle 4 yet. Like, that's being a job.
You're mopping up aisle 4, you're done.
Exactly.
Walking past, and there's aisle 3. And
someone just immediately comes in aisle 4 again, though, and spills some eggs. Like, I've just fucking been there. Like, what is going on?
You gotta clean up aisle 3, or Hope will fucking jump you and then. And that's what happens.
That is juggling in a nutshell. It's juggling in a
Thing
nutshell.
is, though, I think the reason, FoxDrop, as to why it happens bizarrely with jungle is because every other jungler, and by the way, we'll go watch any show I've ever had. If you ever ask a jungler, right, about other junglers in the league, they're always going out of their way to say, well, you know, it's hard to judge a jungler based on his team. And, you know, normally they want to go the other way and say that, like, you know, if a team's doing badly, don't blame the jungler. It might not be his fault. So as a result, if you ever have a bad team where the jungler's popping off, it makes you feel like he must be fucking superhuman. Like, you get excited for a while, but like, as you said, a lot of the examples don't always blossom, actually. Maybe that guy was just maybe he's just good in the first 10 minutes. I'd say even Memento's a good example. Even when he was on Rogue, he was always popping off in the first 10 minutes and getting the game going, but they could never had anyone in the team that could do anything beyond that. So you never really knew until Schalke, like, oh, he actually does himself have flaws beyond like 15 minutes into a game.
Yeah, I think Maxwell actually might be a good example of that too. Again, he was playing on Giants, then he played on Ace UK, and he was always like looking pretty good, and they were not good teams. He goes on Misfits. To be honest, he actually played really well on Misfits up until like this past bit. So I don't know what maybe Junglers is nutcases.
Well, the funny thing is, actually, if you think FoxDrop, people would have used that same logic for Maxlaw in the past years, because the whole thing is that Misfits team on paper was not that sick. Like, it had some good players, but wasn't supposed to be like the best team in Europe. So people probably would have said, I myself probably would have fallen in this trap. I would have thought, you give him better players. Like, you give him Soaz and Febervin. I would have thought, holy shit, this guy's going to go MVP. Like, it's going to be amazing. And actually, it didn't happen, obviously. He ended up being worse.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
The mysteries of the jungle role.
Yeah. That's why I'm in D1.
Will they ever be solved? Probably not. Listen, there's nothing wrong with being in Diamond 2, right, Loco?
Sure. I'm trying to get to Diamond 2. I'm Diamond 4 right now. But yeah,
right, well, exactly. Then you would agree. It's a very respectable division. Actually, some people know a lot about League of Legends playing, right?
The D5 retirement home. I'm well familiar with that. Don't worry, mate.
Or
as Loco calls it, last month.
How do you guys feel about Misfits, and especially how do you guys feel about Curé?
Ooh.
Seemed like he did what he was brought in to do. Like, gave them a totally different feel in the early game. Here's the thing. I would bet they literally, because that move, by the way, is literally the move that TSM's had to do a bunch of times over the years, which is like, our old jungler was too passive and it wasn't working. Let's bring in the new guy, and hey, let's get a young guy who's going to be really aggressive. And then the difference is, after like 3 weeks, TSM was like, now let us just systematically ruin your game, confidence, career, and then fire you. But the difference is, at the moment, they've just given Kire step one. At the moment, he's just had the first few games, and I have to say, it looks as though they told him, fucking turn it loose, mate. Go for it. Let's get a different flavour. And here's the thing. I haven't seen enough yet to know that he's going to be an LEC player, but I liked the look of the team when he was in the squad, though. It gave me a different feel. And I had a glimpse of hope.
They seem to play a bit differently with him in the lineup. And this is the thing, right, is junglers, I think, junglers bring a lot of intangibles to teams, whether that's positive or negative thing, because they tend to be the beating heart of like the communication of a team, because they're the ones running around the map. They're often the shot callers. You know, they're the moving part, right? So that when you change a jungler, I think it has the biggest impact on a roster compared to a different role, maybe mid lane, but I would say it's probably junglers. So Kire coming in, you know, he's played 2 games. The first game was complete free win against XL, where he literally won the game at level 1. The other game against Origin was pretty close, like 20-25 minutes. But Origin, you know, they're a top 3 team, right? So it was a very good, I would still say, good performance against Misfits. And I like what you said, Thorin, about he added something, and it seemed like the team around him played differently, or Misfits in general looked like a different team. Nameplates off, I don't think that you would match this week's Misfits to last week's Misfits personally, and I think a lot of that comes down to Kire. Like, he was tower diving, you know, Nuke Duck in the Origin game. He was the amount of vision that Misfits had in the enemy jungle, especially in the XL game, was like exceptionally high, and I think that's the kind of thing that I think Kire probably brings an element to that. I just hope what happens with him is exactly as you say, Thorin, before, where what happens with basically every single TSM jungler is there's talent there, they try and put them in a system, the system fucks them up, and then they are left to rot in hell. And sometimes they come back like Santorin and sort of amazing, and other times they're just and Svenskar, and they leave TSM and suddenly these guys actually aren't trash. They
get out of that abusive relationship. They remember who they were, what used to make them happy. They start, you know, like working on hobbies. They find a man that actually respects them, loves them for who they are, not trying to make them into something, you know. And then they just live happy, peaceful lives.
They feel like a whole woman again.
You know, sadly, you can never get that cursed tattoo branded upon your arm of that TSM logo. It never comes off, no matter how much time you spend in the shower scrubbing. Even if you can get it physically off, inside your soul, it never leaves. Right, Loco?
Maybe you could get it adapted to like a Warner Brothers logo. Yeah, I'm a big Warner Brothers fan. Love Warner Brothers. I'm very passionate about that. And then suddenly it's all gone. People don't look at you as the TSM reject. Suddenly you're just a good old fan, as everyone is, I'm sure. Chat, I'm sure will agree. Warner Brothers are fantastic. Why wouldn't you get a tattoo of them? Sorted.
Exactly.
Anyways, back to Misfits. I think one thing that Kire brings is kind of an identity to the team. The team plays for Kire. So like stuff like Soaz pushing up, getting a deep ward on enemy Crux, when Kire wanted to invade with Kindred after he got a really good level 1 on the Lee Sin. Like, they have an identity that they play with, and like it becomes the Kire show. It's not Kire tending to the laners, it's the laners actually allowing the jungler to get ahead and helping with the jungler. And that's something Misfits really fucking needed last split, an identity within the team. And yeah, like they finally have it with Kire. So I'm super excited to see kind of the future of the team with Kire, and I definitely like the look of the team better with Kire than Maxlor. And I also can't wait for the additional dimension of Leader potentially joining the roster. Like, LEC has been teasing Leader on Misfits so much. Like, they showed a glimpse of him in like the promos. Like, Misfits promote Leader a lot. So
got some bad news for you. Some bad news.
Hit me up.
So I already did my rant. I think it was on the last episode, the one we had Vidius, where like I don't like anyone who says they're doing a 10-man roster is just a liar. Like that's just marketing. It doesn't exist. No such thing as a 10-man roster. Even logistically, it's a pathetic even concept. Like how could you have 10 players who could all at any point in time be a starter and yet retain any kind of core identity to a team, have any kind of practice structure, get any kind of efficient practice? You couldn't. It wouldn't work. Well, when I had Soaz on my European podcast with Veteran, he basically admitted like that whole thing wasn't true. Like they don't like all those players aren't in the team house in Germany like scrimming with them. Like they just have the 5 starters and then they chose to bring Kirill. Okay, like at the moment there are no plans to bring Leader into the team. Like he at the moment Featherman is the starting player. Like that basically is like they just did that. As far as I can tell, they did it in part, I think personally, as a smoke screen so that later if you take Featherman out, it doesn't look like you're punishing for bad play. You're saying, oh no, I just want to try the other guy who's in my rotation. You know, like I think they were trying to sell like soft sell the fact that it's so hard to remove anyone from the lineup because on paper all the starters have tenure. These are all players who used to be among the best at their position in the LEC. So if you remove that guy, it's immediately going to look like you're basically saying, I don't think he's good enough to be on my team. So I think it was just marketing personally. So sadly, I do not think that they will actually even attempt to bring Leader. I think they will keep Featherman unless things go really drastically bad. Because as I say, they don't have all the players there. This isn't a thing where it's like 10 people in an apartment, everyone plays, and at the end of the week, the coach goes like, and the team is going to be... It's like, no, it's the same fucking 5 players and they've just brought Kiri in, haven't they? I don't think you're going to see Leader, mate. You're not going to see Leader.
Why can't they bring in Leader the same way they brought in Kiri?
Because why would they? Like, what has been so bad about Featherman that Leader's the solution? A guy with a much more limited champion pool and who's only played in a team where he was the fucking team. But okay, why is he going to come into Misfits and fix everything?
I know. Why am I saying he's going to fix everything? I think this team was supposed to be a top 3
Why is he going to fix anything?
This team was supposed to be a top 3 contender. Maybe with Featherman, they can be a top 3 contender, but in the case they can't do it with Featherman, here's another iteration of the roster that might be able to do it. And they have no reason to not give him a shot. They have no reason to not give him a shot, and he's so hyped. Fans would love it.
Well, they have plenty of reasons not to give him a shot. Like for example, Featherman isn't appalling. There's no proof yet that he's better than Featherman. There's a couple of good reasons. Maybe actually they tried him in a scrim and he was worse. We have no clue. So here's the thing. I agree. If the split goes shitty, then I would give him a go for like the last 5 games as well. Say they aren't going to make the playoffs, so they're doing really bad. Yeah, give him a go. Or if mid just looks really, really bad. I agree. Yeah.
If they're just middling, if they're in 5 and 6, you wouldn't give them the shot.
Okay. No, here's the thing. I might in that scenario, but that would also depend on how badly Featherman was playing. Because here's the thing. I don't know why everyone's like out on Featherman all of a sudden. Like, what does the guy do that was so bad? I get that Misfits isn't good. I agree. I actually find Misfits to be a very mysterious team because as far as I can tell, they're an example of, I've often explained that to me, the concept in teams of team play is basically that you should have like overlaps over like my strength should hopefully overlap your weakness and therefore people won't even notice you have a weakness. The problem in Misfits, as far as I can tell, is there's very little overlap at all from the players. So I actually think most of the players in Misfits are good players. Like I think they are. I'm not really a big fan of Maxlaw in the last split, but I think everyone else is an LEC player. Maybe even like at worst an average LEC player. Like I think they're all quality, but the team doesn't work at all in my opinion. It works pretty badly.
This is just 100 Thieves gone slightly better. That's what
it's a worse. Like. It's a better version of 100 Thieves.
Yeah, 100 Thieves gone
similar
slightly
scenario.
Better.
Yeah, I don't really get Misfits. Like,
because here's the thing. I'll go ahead and say it. Like, even with the whole Kiri experiment, this team isn't going to be a contender. They're never going to get the potential as far as I can tell. The initial first split lineup when you saw it on paper, that really looked like a team that could win LEC. This team, even with Kiri, still looks like if they finished 4th, that would be a great performance for this lineup as it is right now.
Yeah. I
don't think it's reasonable to expect much more.
I feel like if you told the Misfit stats at the beginning of the season or at the beginning of the year, you would get 4th with your lineup, they'd be like, what the fuck? Like, how the fuck did you get 4th? And then if you tell them now you finished 4th in summer, they're like, holy shit, we did well. Like, that's how far the expectation is.
Yeah, but here's the example. From when I said earlier, the reason I think Splice probably will be the 4th best team is because Splice has an absolutely set identity, which includes strengths and strengths that work against other people in the league. They have players that fit those strengths. They actually seem to have some kind of coordination, decent team play, good team morale, etc. A mixture of rookies and some veterans. Like Misfits, all the potential they have still exists, Loco. Like, what reason is there why Soaz and Feberman might not have amazing seasons now and carry them? It's just that at the moment we have no reason to believe it. And the killer for me is they still don't have a really good identity. Like, where's their winning identity? Where's Misfits strong? Where are they going to beat top teams? Where are they going to take care of the teams below them? At the moment, I feel like they don't still have that identity. There's still just a bunch of players who go into the server and hope something goes well.
The thing about Soaz and Feberman, if you talked about them as pretty good players, that's not what Misfits expected out of them, and that's not what we expected out of them. We expected them to be some of the best solo laners in Europe, and they haven't been that. And maybe that is just a reality of who these players are now. They maybe aren't the number 1 or even the number 2 players in Europe in their roles.
Yeah, I remember when Soaz left Fnatic, there was a massive uproar, right? About they kept the wrong guy with Whippo staying, because he was seen as like, you know, top 3, top 2, top laner in Europe. And I mean, I don't know what the answer is, because if you can't pinpoint the problem, then how do you know what the solution is, right? And I don't think
everyone's
it is.
average.
You know what? Here's one thing I will say is, even though in the past, I mean, I know they obviously did a coaching staff change. Like Jesus was technically the coach for most of spring until right up at the end, and then they brought Moose back, and now he's the coach, etc. That's one thing I do think looks like a difference to me, because here's the thing. I'll tell you another team who on paper had a whole bunch of good players and it was going terribly. It's called Fnatic at the beginning of the spring split. That team in the first 3 weeks of LEC looked like it was not going to make the playoffs. That looked like a fucking terrible team, even though only one player had changed. Like, where was Whipple, the guy who everyone was saying was the best Western top laner? Where the fuck was Reckless at that point in time? He was just an okay player. Broxton was just having almost no impact on the games. Like, the whole team had fallen apart. But the difference is, if I had to give credit, yes, I'll give credit to the players for figuring out their roles, but I think Youngbuck must have done a lot in that Fnatic team. He looked to me like he found a lot of band-aid solutions. Like, he figured out how a player has to play comfortably. He knew when to give Reckless carry potential in the team. Like, there's the difference. I don't look at Misfits and say they have a coach that's going to turn the whole team around, that can find, like, their coaching staff seems as lost as the players do. And that's the killer for me, because that's why for me, Youngbuck was the coach of the last split. Like, he took a team that was fucking terrible, had no chance of making it, and he made them not even look like the old team. He made them look like a new team.
Who did get coached of the split? Was it Grabs?
I think it was.
It was OG. No, it was Giuliotto.
Oh yes,
yeah,
sorry,
it was
OG. Yes.
I think he probably, to be fair, that was probably well deserved as well, honestly.
Bullshit. Yeah. Well, I mean, we have different opinions.
Well, he's taken every roster he's worked with and made them successful. Like,
that's true. I'll give him credit.
And I think the Origin as well, individually, are similar. You know, I think if you put Misfits and Origin side by side at the beginning of 2019 spring, you're like, yeah, these are similar, like, decent players.
Oh, I'm with you on that.
Let's see how they clap together.
Here's the difference, FoxDrop. The key thing, and I think actually those two teams taught me a lot about League of Legends, which is, I agree, if you look at those two rosters on paper, both pretty good rosters, should both contend with G2. The difference I've learned from seeing those two rosters play is those OG players, so many of those are players who have a very smart way of understanding the game. All their styles seem to fit. They even have the right person to top if you want to have this person as an AD carry. Like, the difference is those roles fit. The Misfits one, those do just look like in isolation. You're asking someone, good player? Yeah, good. Good player? Yeah. It's like you didn't ever look at the bigger picture. Like, oh wait, actually did that fit together? I don't know.
I think that's so hard to tell. Like,
it's the hardest thing of all. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I think
Origin, I think GM is the hardest role in the game, mate. I think it's the toughest role to do.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Origin for me is a team that's greater than the sum of their parts as well. And they took chances. They took a lot of chances. Cold could have very easily crashed and burned. Like, yeah, he paid on you well, and he looked good. That's the reason why they brought him in. But he could have easily just been like a meh kind of guy, right? Nuke Duck for me had always been a guy that was always on the outside looking in whenever you think about great EU mids, because he was just never, for me at least, he was he was kind of overhyped, because it's like we were edging on Nuke Duck. Like, he's just getting so close, you're so close, but never finished. And that was for me, that was Nuke Duck. Feels good, but it's not quite what you're looking for, right? Origin Nuke Duck, on the other hand, though, I think has, made me shut up about that, because when I look at Origin's lineup, I don't pick a single one of those teams and say, yo, I'm going to build a roster around any one of these guys. These are guys who I put around someone that I already want to build around. And I'll eat crow on that shit as well, because look at them. They're a top 3 team. The way they play the game as well is like really smart. And yeah, I think this Origin lineup is probably the biggest surprise. As much of a surprise as Vitality is crashing and burning, I think is Origin's success for this split, in my opinion, from now.
What kills me is and the depressing thing is like, I agree. I think OG might be the smartest team overall. Like, I think a lot of G2's brilliance, in my opinion, is like intuitive. It's like in the game they make a play and then the other guy just somehow knows how to follow up on that. It's nothing they sat down and they didn't have a blackboard and say, I'm going to go here and you're going to, like none of that shit. But the difference is OG, so many of their map setups look like they definitely worked on that in a scrim, or that's the response they wanted to do. They actually are very Korean in that respect. But the killer for me is this, considering that all of their rosters performing, they look really consistent. They just picked the worst time ever to be that kind of a team, because they should still lose to G2 every time. Like, I'd have loved to have seen this OG against last year's Fnatic. That would be a fucking amazing matchup. Like, give me that one. Maybe they can win that. I don't know. It'd be fun as fuck to find out. The problem is they're just going to be stuck in the shadow of G2, unfortunately, which will be depressing, but that's another factor in your. I always say this to people. That's why you can't judge championships as though that's the only metric that makes you a great team. Because tell you what, you could take a lot of great historical teams, put them in a different era, and they wouldn't have won any championships. They'd have been number 2 or number 3, and they'd have looked like the loser. Whereas because they won, we call them the winner. They were the best. Like, we put them immediately in the conversation for the great teams. So I actually feel a bit hard done by for OG in that respect. Then again, though, OG has a lineup that they could run this team for like 3 years, man. This team could just stay together a long, long time and be good.
No, for sure, not all championships are equal. As someone that's won 2 LCS championships, the first one where we had to go through... where we had to go through LMQ C9 with the roster that we had, and like kind of the upswing that we had to make and kind of the pieces that we had to put together, I think was I'm not going to say it's a fluke, but it was incredibly hard and things had to fall in pieces. And there were parts that we had to get lucky on for us to win. Like, that was such a fucking hard championship. And then the championship right after that, the spring championship, it was so easy peasy. We had the best roster, like things fit together really well. We were the best team fighting team. No one was split pushing. Everyone would just match us in team fighting. Like, and the roster that I had was just so fucking easy to win with. Like, that one was, I feel like that championship just fucking landed on our lap. Like, not every championship is created equal. And yeah, I feel for OG, like they look like a fucking great team right now, and it is so fucking hard for them to win, just purely due to the fact that G2 exists.
Let's just end it there, actually, because the thing is, I have to go to do a show in like 8 minutes anyway. So if you want, you can do one last topic. But I think what we did on this one is we didn't cover every team overall. We did most of them still, but I just wanted this to be like, let's just do some interesting topics. Do you have what were you going to say, FoxDrop? Was there a last topic you want to do, mate?
I was just off-the-cuff question. Like, if you stick Origin in NA, like, do you think this is like the number 2 team? Do you think this maybe challenges Team Liquid? Because you say the only thing that kind of stops these guys is the fact they have to fucking play G2, right? So well, what if they don't play G2?
Right now things are weird because OG looked kind of shitty. OG looked kind of shitty last week, where they looked like the worst team to Fnatic, right? Fnatic is 4-0, G2 is 4-0, OG isn't. So if you...
That's still... I think both their losses are G2 and Fnatic, by the way, so...
Yes. Yeah. So if you if both these teams keep developing, like I think in NA, OG can contest TL. Like in NA, things are much closer to TL, C9, TSM. They're a lot closer than any teams in Europe. Like when you think G2, Fnatic, Origin, you think G2, Origin, Fnatic. In NA, it's TL, TSM, C9, like all right next to each other. OG would be part of that clump. OG could be the best team out of that clump. OG could be the worst team out of that clump, but they would fit right into the clump.
I think Team Liquid has slightly better players overall, so I personally would probably still pick them to win, because I do think actually having the best players is always a fucking OP quality to have in a team. But I think OG would be like right behind them. I could definitely contest them. So they might be able to win NA, I would agree. Let's just leave it on that then. I've got to go now.
All right.
There's you 2 hours.
Well, thank you so much for being on FoxDrop. Thank you so much for being on as always, Duncan. All right.
Thank you.
If you want to support us, go to the patreon.com/listenlocal.
All right. I'm going to drop the call later, guys.
See ya.
Thank you so much to our gold Patreons, William Hishon and Tobias Bernasconi, Iceland C9 fan, and Butt Pounder 420. Thank you so much for supporting us. Without you guys, this kind of show can't happen. And thank you to all our Patreons, our Silvers, Bronze, and Iron.